Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very unorthodox Glasshouse Midnight Review presented by Glasshouse Films. It's not midnight, and it's like the day after the movie came out, but we're still reviewing this thing. I am Carson, your ever-bearded and beautiful host, and here with me is the most beautiful guest we've ever had on the show, Jessica. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Carson.
So, the big reason why I wanted you on this episode is because we're discussing Ready Player One, and you are, I don't personally know many people that have read the book, and out of those people, you love it the most.
I did really like the book. I even went and listened to the audiobook in the last week building up to the movie release because I wanted to have it completely fresh in my mind.
Okay. And that was read by Will Wheaton, right?
Yes, which has its pros and cons to it.
Yeah, I'm not a big Will Wheaton fan myself, but
I felt like he did a really good job of embodying a nerd voice for the narration.
Yes.
He went a little overboard with some of his screaming.
Yeah, I mean, what do you expect from Wesley Crusher? I know it pisses him off to this day, but if I were to ever see Will Wheaton, it would very much be a shut up, Wesley kind of situation. So, you're a really big fan of the book. What about the book did you really, really enjoy and wanted to see on the big screen adaptation?
I really enjoyed the visuals that the book provided.
Okay.
I liked hearing about all of that 80s pop culture because even though I'm a 90s kid, I have a brother who was an 80s kid.
Okay.
And so I kind of grew up with his love for the 80s pop culture.
Okay.
So in all the references and battles and epic things that happened, I was picturing all the movies of my childhood, all of the movies of my childhood, all of the things that I really had on a pedestal because I always looked up to my brother, so anything that he liked was really cool.
Okay.
And I felt like the book was like 300 pages of just revisiting childhood.
Yeah, it's not a super long book. It's definitely a quick read kind of book. So were you really excited to see like every single reference that book made just presented in the film and just overwhelmed by it?
I knew that they weren't going to be able to put every single reference in.
Yeah.
I could be idealistic in hoping that they could, but I figured with licensing that they would have to cut a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I'm really hoping to see kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons type world.
Oh, okay.
And I was really excited for like the Temple of Doom, the skull cave that they like go into, and they
in the first challenge, right?
Yeah, I was hoping that at least for a good portion of it, you'd have kind of that like vintage-esque looking vibe to the whole thing.
Okay.
And I wanted to see all of the kind of. I was hoping that with each vintage scene, it would bring out the style of that vintage game.
Okay, so almost as if the movie would during the key sequence, the literal key sequences, it would mimic whatever pop culture it was referencing.
Yeah, I was hoping that while he was in the tunnel in the first key, that it would look like hand-drawn D&D.
Okay. Or kind of like a classic dungeon crawling movie, or like Conan the Barbarian, or something like that.
And then, like during the Pac-Man scene, that it would look all retro, like Pac-Man everywhere.
Like the sequence with Daito, and I always forget the other kid's name. Say again. Doto. When they were on that one world, and it seemed like everything. It was like a specific retro world, and it was all like line graphics. So it's like black background and then green lines of like tanks. Yeah, I was kind of thinking that would those things. I was like, okay, I'd be interested to see how that's done.
Mm-hmm. Or like the orb ballroom.
Yes.
How they were going to make a giant circular club. And they didn't even try to do that in the movie.
So
sorry, not bringing up the movie. Right?
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But that does bring to mind a couple of things that I wanted to definitely touch on. So one of the other reasons why I wanted you on this is because not only do you love the book, I have also read the book, and I'm actually not a big fan of it. I thought the story and the idea of it was really fun. However, I was not jazzed about the execution. I personally, the references wore really thin on me very fast because it's every page you got like up to a dozen references to something, and it's like, okay, let's get the story moving. Let's stop kind of this, 80s dick measuring contest, please, and let's just have an adventure. And the other thing that I wasn't jazzed about in the book itself is I honestly didn't really like the character of Parzival or Wade Watts in the real world, and I thought Artemis was underwritten a little bit.
Okay.
But I really liked Ogden Morrow, the co-creator of the Oasis. I really liked Aech.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Aech in the game, and then when they showed her reveal in the book, and then without going too far into it, was like, there's still certain prejudices that people have, and I'm kind of like, that's a little ham-fisted white guy.
You have to remember, though, that book wasn't written in the last, 5 years, and in the last 5 years is where we've had a lot of growth when it comes to acceptance of...
True. What I'm more getting at is that it was very ham-fisted. Yeah. It was, and which is funny, without going too far into the movie, I like how they handled that in the movie. Mm-hmm. How H's predilections were like, oh, okay, it's just like it isn't, a spotlight isn't shown on it, and I feel like that was something that the movie did quite well. So going into it, my big thoughts were, the issues that I have with the book are going to get fixed in the movie, because you can't stop and just go like, oh, I recognize that reference, that reference, that reference, that reference. You can't stop the movie and just do that the whole time.
Yeah.
So the movie would automatically kind of fix that. And then the other big thought I had is Spielberg is a weird choice for this, because he comes from that era of filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And it almost seems like it would be a better fit for someone like Edgar Wright to step in and direct the film, especially given how great of a job he did with Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
That was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that film. But it's, or in a weird way, kind of like Quentin Tarantino. Someone who's a really good DJ who can mix and match, various characters, styles, references into a cohesive film and let it play out. Yeah, not like with all the blood and guts and all that kind of stuff, but the same kind of idea that's present. So it was weird to me that it was Spielberg, but at the same time, Spielberg's never really made a bad film. He's made not great films, but he's never made a bad film. Even on his worst day, he's better than most directors. So with all of that, I went into the film just wanting a good film. I was like, you know what? I'd seen a few of the trailers, and what was curious to me is that one of the things that they showed off a lot is the car chase. I'm like, I don't remember that in the book at all. There was no chase like that in the book. So what is this? And almost as a, now kind of transitioning into the film itself, almost as like a...
Before you do, I have comments on what you said about the book.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
You said that you don't like the characters of Artemis being underplayed, and you didn't like Wade in the real world, and you didn't like how they were so, kind of blunt with Aech.
Yes.
I liked that Wade was a little dislikable. I liked that he was a little bit gullible and foolish because he's a teenager.
Yeah.
A lot of people forget that the heroines of these stories are kids, especially something like this. And being a kid, he's going to be stupid. And Artemis, being a female, at least in our society today, is more likely to kind of step back.
A little bit more guarded.
To be as upfront and open. So I actually liked the honesty of the characters.
Yeah.
I liked that Aech kept it so secret because she had been cast out by her family, and so she was, I think, kind of ashamed of her sexuality and afraid to come forward, which is horrible that she was. But I think it's a very honest coming out type situation for a lot of kids who feel ashamed of their sexuality. And I feel like Wade is the idiot teenager that, like, most teenage boys are going through their, like, they haven't quite figured things out yet. They might be too eager to jump to something. They might be a little bit impulsive. And Artemis, I think she went along with stereotypes. Also, with Steven Spielberg, I was hoping that since he has such a good track record with movies, that he'd be able to pull it off. And I thought it was a benefit that he came from that generation, because I figured, if he came from that generation, he could portray the generation.
Okay.
The authenticity of what it was really like.
He
could really show what films were like then and what pop culture was like then, because he had first-hand experience it. But in your transition into the movie...
I was going to say, the other director I was thinking of was J.J. Abrams.
Oh, I would love him to direct it.
Because, very much. Parzival, I feel like... Parzival Wade Watts. I feel like he... And this is both the film and the book. I feel like, more so in the book than the film, he does change over the course, but he doesn't have that dramatic of a change.
No.
And
over the span of about 8 months, maybe?
Something like that. But it's still something where I feel like the character, even after everything he was through, I was like, I still think he's kind of a bit of a shit. And Artemis, I understand where you're coming from on her having to be more guarded, but when they... I guess, you know what? I'll give that one to you. I'll give that one to you straight up. I personally didn't consider that as much as I could have in the past. So, you know what? I'll take that one back. So,
having worked so long with kids, I see them make mistakes that you just have to go, they're going to make the mistake. And so reading the book, I was like, okay, he's going to make some mistakes.
Yes.
He's 18.
Exactly. So I mean, we're 10 minutes in, it's a bad time to bring it up, but the plot of the story, as is takes place in 2045, correct? Just a few scant years away from Blade Runner 2049. Takes place in 2045. At this point in time, Ogden Morrow and his partner... I know I watched the movie last night. What was the guy's name?
James Morrow?
James Morrow. That is correct. Yeah.
Halliday.
Halliday? Yeah. James Halliday, right? I was mixing up James and Ogden. I'm like, James. Anyway. So Halliday is... Halliday is kind of the Steve Jobs, Ogden Morrow, kind of this Steve Wozniak. In a very blunt way to put this. Together, they essentially created the internet. Just making this as base level as we can. If the internet was just a huge game that you could play in, and it's immersive technology, you put on a visor, you can even put on a suit and like feel hits and whatever, and you're actually running, and your character runs the game. That kind of immersion technology that we're still striving for right now. So these two men, they create the Oasis, and Halliday ends up passing away. And when he does, he says, "Hey, I've set up this Easter egg hunt, basically, or not Easter egg hunt, just egg hunt. Sorry, Easter's right around the corner.
He called an Easter egg.
Say again? Oh, he did?
They called an Easter egg.
Oh, okay. So
for the hidden egg.
Yeah. So he sets up this competition, very Willy Wonka-esque. Whomever can find these 3 keys, you can get to this treasure, and what this treasure does is it gives you controlling interest in the company itself, as well as what, $500 billion, something like that.
280 trillion.
Okay, an obscene amount of film or amount of money. So the character of Parzival, Wade Watts in the real world, he is a die-hard hunter of these things, and everybody who is interested in hunting this egg down, they believe all of the secrets to it are hidden within Halliday's life. And Halliday was obsessed with all things 80s. Video games, movies, music, everything. Television shows included. From all over the globe. Weird enough. And so everybody who wants to hunt this egg down, they are all super well versed in everything 80s. And as the story goes along, Parzival comes across a clue that clues him into, that gives him kind of an edge to find the first key. And from there he starts trying to find the rest of the keys with the help of his friend Aech. He meets up another egg hunter or gunter, Artemis, and they also come across Daito and Dato?
Shoto with an S.
Oh, Soto.
Yeah.
Okay, I said it wrong earlier. So Soto. And eventually they all start working together. Against that is the company IOI. I think the best way to put it is Oasis is the internet, IOI is the internet service provider.
It's net neutrality.
Exactly. It's a little ahead of its time, but and it's not as ham-fisted as it could be in the book and the movie. And they obviously want to control the Oasis so that they can start, because the Oasis is free to everyone to use. They want to
Facebook and turn it into all ads.
Yes, exactly. Something that they did, I think they did pretty well in the movie, is highlight how it mirrors microtransactions in video games nowadays. I kind of liked that. So we have these 2 forces that are trying to get the egg for 2 different reasons, and you know why one group should have it and the other group should not. And that's the basics of the story itself. Now, with that being said, Jessica, what did you think of the movie?
Let me take you on a trip around the world and back.
People come to the Oasis for all the things they can do.
And you won't have to really sit still.
But they stay because of all the things they can be.
I wanted to throw my soda at the screen from about 2 minutes in, and that's being generous. I was stomping on the chair in front of me to try and stop myself from yelling profanities.
Okay.
I went in knowing that it wasn't going to be the same as the book. I went in going, okay, there's no way that they can fit the entire book into a 2.5-hour movie. I know some stuff is going to be cut, but I did not think that they were going to take the names of the characters and the idea of an internet play place and some corporation that wants to buy it out and just throw the rest of the story out the window. They didn't, the characters were unrecognizable. The plot was unrecognizable. They didn't use a single key from the entire book. Every situation where he got a key was completely different from the book. They didn't use
the closest would be the 3rd one, right?
Not really, even. The 3rd gate, he had to go in through a castle, and they had to have 3 of them together to get the key. And
that's right, because the book is that you find the keys, then you have to find the gate. Yeah,
so you get the key, and then you get the gate, and the clues are something that you, have to actually think about, whereas, in the movie, it's just some guy figured out that it's a race, and now everybody just races.
For the first key, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the 3rd gate, I swear I just listened to it yesterday too. I don't know why I'm spacing on it.
I do remember that the third gate was essentially very close to the way that it was presented in the movie. That it was a siege, basically.
Mm-hmm. There was a siege, and then he gets through, and he has to play the game perfectly. But then he's like let into this room where there's a whole bunch of game systems arranged in the shape of an Easter egg.
Yeah.
And he has to figure out the password to get into the computer. And
yeah.
It's very different from the movie. It didn't really follow the book at all. And then they didn't even like add in even a small amount of the 80s references. Like you saw the first Batmobile at the beginning.
That was kind of cool. But from 1966.
Yeah. And that's not the 80s. And you saw, King Kong, and you saw a T-Rex, and you saw the DeLorean, and you saw the Iron Giant. But the Iron Giant robot was never picked. The giant robots that they fought with were actually a prize.
Ultraman.
Ultraman is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Robots that they fought with were a prize for clearing one of the gates.
Mm-hmm.
It was the second gate. If you cleared it, you got a giant robot.
Yeah.
And Iron Giant was a robot option, but nobody chose it. And like the Mega Godzilla that the guy used was
Mecha Godzilla.
Well, it was a ripoff of Mecha Godzilla, which is different than just Godzilla robot. And so it just, I have feelings about this. The Ultraman was a prize that Wade and Daito Shoto had won by doing a side quest that had nothing to do with the adventure. And it was something that, like, Shoto was a 22-year-old man in the book, whereas he was an 11-year-old boy in the movie. And IOI broke into his apartment and threw him off his balcony and killed him. In the book, in the movie, it's just like, oh, hey, we're going to ride around with this band.
Hey, buddy, it's Wade.
Kind of like a Big Trouble Little China thing. Or, I don't.
Big Trouble Little China? Are you sure you don't mean Short Round?
Some, yeah, whatever.
Because he's closer to Short Round. It's just like the little kid who's like, ha, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's like all it is. And they had to go through a bunch to get the capsule to make him change, and they just kind of throw it all out in the movie. They do whatever they want.
So part of that is that you have to have efficiency with storytelling. So I could understand just getting rid of the gate aspect and just key is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing for me is that the things that they kept from the book, for the most part, I was actually fine with them keeping, and changing everything else I liked. I actually like this more than the book.
Well, you're wrong, but that's okay.
Well, consider this. I'm not a big fan of the book.
Yeah, but like there were so many aspects to the book that they changed that they didn't have to change. Like in the book, Wade's aunt was really like neglectful and abusive to him, and in the movie they made him like oddly, weirdly attached to her in some way, and they could have totally kept true to the book in that without spending any more money. And then I agree that like, okay, maybe they would have had to cut the gates in order to get through the book, or through the movie in time, but I don't know, they didn't need to change every single gate. Like
I do like how the movie subverted certain expectations. For instance, there is a sizable sequence near the last third of the book that is significantly different than the rest of the book itself. I don't really want to go too far into it, but they subverted expectations in that it essentially still happens, but it's to a different character.
Yeah.
And I believe I like that because it changes who's the active protagonist. And I feel like it makes everybody a little bit more useful. Now, one thing that I will give to the book is that I do like that in the book, Wade does go through some change. And I like the way that happens in the book, whereas in the movie I was like, oh, so when's he gonna move? Oh, we're at key 2 and he has, okay, well, that's a choice. But I like how in the book it slows the story down for pacing reasons, slows it down, concentrates on him trying to better himself, and I do like that. However, that's just one thing that I prefer to the book. To the movie, I enjoyed everything else much more in the movie. I liked the. I will give you. I do kind of wish that they had kept how Parzival gets the first key, and it's a more Dungeons and Dragons type thing. It's actually an adventure module from Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's not Hall of Monsters. I forget the name of it, but it's a really famous one. He's like, oh, I actually memorized this. I know how to get Tomb of Horrors, I think. But as a trade-off, we have a much more fast-paced, essentially key and gate sequence built into one. In that, it's a really cool car chase. And he gets versus having to play someone at an arcade cabinet for like hours.
Yes, but they forgot to mention the whole part. Like in the book, he's a kid from the ghetto. He's a kid who comes from literally nothing. He has like a school-issued visor and gloves.
Yes.
And he figures out the clue just based off of using the resources that are free and available to him. And a big reason that they did that in the book is to show that this competition was fair to anyone could do it. Whereas in the movie, he, for some reason, had money and resources available, and he had to pay to do the race, and in order to win the race, you had to have the money for it, which makes it not really a fair competition to begin with. Yes, it's a cool race scene, but it kind of defeats the purpose of, like,
undermining his character.
Like, his main character development is, I'm poor and I want to be rich so I don't have to live so miserably. And then he meets Artemis, who's like, no, we can help other people. Just because you're poor and you want to be rich doesn't mean that you should be rich and ignore everyone else. And she kind of teaches him to care about other people in the world instead of just caring about getting out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I like in the book seeing the progression of he comes from nothing, he gets everything, and then he decides that he wants to help others so that the world isn't such an unjust and unfair place. And in the movie, they just forget that. Yeah, you have a cool chase scene, a cool car scene, but they could have thrown a cool car scene in anywhere after the first gate during his time that he was spent leveling up. And they wouldn't have had to spend that much extra time on it. All they would have had to do is spend a couple minutes showing him going to school and having no money, and then having a eureka moment. Oh, let's go to the temple. And they could have used so many cool stylists. All of the universes and worlds that they went to. The great thing about the Oasis is that every world is different. Every world is stylistic according to what somebody specifically designed for that world. And they had ample options available to them. They could have had an anime section. They could have had traditional Dungeons and Dragons. They could have had futuristic Tron. They could have had they could have had everything for all these different worlds, but they just had the same style in every world, and it was boring. It was boring to see the same style of technology in every world when they literally had everything available to them, every style that they possibly could, and they didn't utilize that.
Yeah. I will say, it is a little bit of a shame that they didn't concentrate more on just how varied everything in the Oasis could be. But at the same time, I feel that those change. Now, okay, before I actually praise the film some more, I will say the first 5 minutes were incredibly clunky. It's like, first of all, there's a little bit of a voiceover from Wade at the very beginning and at the very end. I'm like, no, voiceover the whole movie. I want to hear him the whole time. So it was a little weird.
Meeting him and immediately starting to hit on him and stuff.
Say again?
Artemis is this little. No, she's not a slut because that's a bad word. she's very promiscuous. She meets him and immediately is like hitting on him and flirting with him.
Mhm.
Whereas in the book, she's very reserved and shy and doesn't really open up to anyone, and she's kind of distant.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that I found really, really clunky, because they went from like, I don't know you, to 10 minutes later, I'm in love with you. Like,
yeah. But what's funny is I felt that's how it was in the book as well, and I just, to be fair, I'm not a huge fan of love stories in general. Like a love story subplot, I'm like, kick it out, make them friends. I don't care. I just get rid of it.
The love story in the book was cheesy, but it was better paced than the love story in the movie.
Yes, I feel like what they should have done is, they, instead of them falling in love, it's more them like, hey, now that this craziness is over, let's go out for coffee. You know, something considerably lower key. And I think that could have worked in the story's favor. So, right when we get into the story, I guess it's because I oftentimes really like adaptations that aren't just scene for scene same as the source material. I'm watching a movie, I'm watching something different. If I want the source material, I'll go to the source material. So once the movie introduced, started with, oh, we all know basically how to get the key, we just have to race for it. I was like, oh, this isn't going to be the way the novel is structured. This is going to be 3 big set pieces of them finding the key and accomplishing the story, and that's pretty much it. And I was fine with that. I was like, you know what? It's simple, it's fun, let's go. And
I would have been more fine with it if they had added more stylistic.
Yes. I will say it would have been nice if, instead of them just racing in New York City, if it was in like, not necessarily Tron, but maybe the race at certain points they'd have to go through like portals, and it took them to a different part of the game itself. So it's like, oh, we have to race through part of New York City, and then we go right into medieval knights, and there's like guys on horses riding around like lancing various drivers. Like, that could have been really fun. And so, but part of me, coming from watching a lot of movies, oh yay dog, oh it's Pig Leg. Part of that is, it seems that people in general, like you and I, are kind of outliers in this. Like, we throw everything at the screen at us. We don't care. Let's see some real creativity. But I, just hearing other people walking out of the cinema, just talking to more and more people, there are a lot of people who can't latch onto that, and breaks them out of the movie instead of them accepting what's happening. And that's not to excuse Spielberg, and I think Warner Brothers is the one who put this together. That's not to excuse that, but I understand a little bit of it. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to go into it because I feel like it would spoil one of the most fun scenes I've seen in cinemas so far this year. But the second act challenge, the second key, I loved it. I loved every little bit of that scene because I know both pieces of the source material that they were going for. And the whole time I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen. Oh, it happened. That's fantastic. And it, in a weird way, it kind of reveals like, oh, the movie had the potential to go into that more. And I feel like the studio was like, you can do that for this scene, and that's it. And that's where a lot of that stylization came in. And that's easily the best scene of the movie. And then it kind of goes back to business as usual. So you have this really high point, and then it's back to the baseline of the movie.
And I will admit, the only time that I enjoyed the movie was during those few parts where it was kind of an homage to the reference that they were making.
Yes. Yeah.
But I didn't like it when they started to mix it back in with the regular part of the movie.
Okay.
Without spoiling anything.
So like the dance hall.
Yeah, so they go into a movie and they have to enact the movie to figure out the clue, which is something that they kind of do in the book, but it's a totally different movie in the book.
Yeah.
I like seeing the references to the movie that they were supposed to be inside of. I did not like when they started bringing outside characters that had nothing to do with that movie into the movie.
Okay.
I was like, what? There's no reason for these to be mixed. There's no logic to this being mixed other than Halliday would think it was cool. But the thing is, Halliday was so obsessive with everything in the 80s being exactly how he remembered it. Halliday, by character, wouldn't have added a random character into a movie that didn't belong there. So I enjoyed it until the weird characters started to come in.
What's the weird character you're referring to?
The zombies.
So the whole dance hall.
Yeah, so I was like,
okay,
they're in this movie and they have tons of characters to work with within this movie that could be scary and something that they can work with. But why are they throwing zombies into this? This movie has nothing to do with zombies. And Halliday was so obsessed with everything being exactly how it was, it makes no sense for him to throw zombies into it. And they did bring that through a little bit in the movie by having the Hall of Memories where everything was reconstructed exactly how Halliday remembered.
Yes.
So why, someone who's so particular about things being exactly how they remembered, why would they mix something that doesn't?
I feel that they established that much more in the book, and in the movie itself, it fits. And it fits because they don't spend as much time with Halliday. And that's fine. And again, for me, that's totally fine because I hate the character of Halliday. I think he's a total shut-in, and I don't like those characters.
See, I liked the character of Halliday because they say in the book that they think he had Asperger's or some kind of autism. Worked so much with people who have autism, he shows a lot of those traits of being overly obsessed with one thing. And this is a personal opinion, but I loved Halliday because it was endearing to me.
Yeah.
To see someone who was so passionate about their one thing and they invested their life in it because they've worked with people who kind of get that way.
Yeah.
So you didn't like him for probably the same reason that I loved him.
Fair enough.
Misunderstood her.
So with one last thing before I kind of wanted to wrap this up and put a nice neat bow on it. I wanted more Ogden. Yeah, I loved his character.
They had no Ogden in the movie.
Yeah, and that was the thing is.
It made no sense for him to just be the random robot guy because they had this falling out, and then the robot information guy in the library was available any time that Parzival went there. So you're telling me that Ogden just stayed logged into the Oasis, hanging out at the library for his entire life?
Also,
the coin, they should have at least put... The Pac-Man scene was my favorite part of the book.
Okay.
So I'm a little obsessive about it. I am not wearing it today, but I was wearing a Pac-Man dress yesterday. And, I was so excited for the Pac-Man scene. And that's something that they could have done, an 80s cutscene with the inspirational music and showing him playing Pac-Man. Would have had a real homage to the 80s with the music and the cutscene.
Yeah.
And he could have gotten the level up, and it would have been exactly like the book and really cool. And they just randomly have Ogden be the information guy who flips him a coin because of a joking bet they made.
I will say in an effort to conserve time, because I knew they wouldn't be able to fit that into the movie. I knew that wasn't going to show up. I do like how they folded it in.
I think they could have spent 2 minutes on the Pac-Man thing, and been done. Like, he could have just stumbled across the Pac-Man machine somewhere and been like, I'm going to do this. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. I'm just saying, as far as, like, efficient storytelling, I like the way it was wrapped in there and how they nailed it in a very particular way. That just kind of worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all of that being said, I'm going to venture a guess and say you wouldn't recommend people go see this?
I would say save your money. If you really, like, want to see it, then your body, your choice. Just know that I did not enjoy it. I was very upset about it. I think if you're a real fan of the book, someone who read the book and loved the book, you're not going to like the movie. And I also, like, I know your opinion is different, but I felt like the plot and the character development was weak enough that even if I hadn't seen or read the book, I wouldn't have liked it as a standalone movie. So
fair enough. So yeah, obviously I feel vastly different. I think as far as a really fun blockbuster, I think it works quite well. It moves along at a good pace. Now, I am also totally willing to admit that I have seen, like, only 2 other movies this year that I've liked, so maybe I'm just thirsty for something of quality. But I did like the film. I had a lot of fun with it. If someone were to say, like, "Hey, Carson, you want to go watch this movie I haven't seen?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I'll have fun watching it again." I think it's a fun, as I said, fun spectacle blockbuster. I think it's worth seeing in cinemas. And beyond that, though, yeah, it's not doing anything innovative. It's not doing anything groundbreaking. But I like that they kept the skeleton of the book, but they plaster it with totally different muscle and skin.
I will say that I've had a couple friends with younger kids, like 4, 5, 6-year-old kids, who have asked me about it. And I will say, if you have a little kid who likes action movies, superhero movies, things like that, this is something that a little kid would like. It has very clean humor in it. You don't have to worry about anything being too gory or vulgar for your kids. So I think the only demographic that I would recommend it to, the parents who want to get their kids to be quiet and excited for a couple hours.
I will say, this film does actually act as a really good trailer for the book. I think if you watch the movie and you really like it, then you should probably go check out the book, because the book is just so much more. Mm-hmm. Also, I like that the character of Aech is actually a character in the movie. He's not a character in the book. He shows up like twice.
In the book, he's a very insignificant character in the book. Aech is supposed to be like your typical high school kind of douchebag bully. Yeah. And I was like, why did they turn like this small, insignificant high school, not very intelligent guy into this like kind of silly, kind of maniacal bad guy? And I was really hoping that when they killed Aech in the movie, that it would cut to the guy in his house.
Me too.
The trailer. Like, oh, dang.
Like, just take off his set and throw it across there. He's like, bleh. Yeah, I was expecting that too. But I feel like that works very well in the movie, because he is really indicative of gamer trolls. As someone who does play a lot of video games, I know the kind of guy that he is, and he is drawn quite well in the film. And I know the reason why they make him a bigger character is because there's not in the book, there's not really a villain within the video game. And in the movie, they establish these are villains in the video game that are other players, and these are the villains in the real world. And it puts a threat on both fronts, whereas in the book, there's really just the one threat, and that's in the real world. And it does pervade into the game, but I like that separation.
But Aech is teamed up with IOI, so even though he's not wearing an IOI uniform, he's still paid by IOI. He still works with IOI. So with that argument, you could say that even though he is an individual within the game, he's still a representative of IOI.
True.
He's the whole thing that he's loyal to them.
Yeah. It's that he is... We only ever see his game avatar. Mm-hmm. I think, with the obvious exception that we just discussed, I think it helps that we only see him as a game avatar and that he looks different. Mm-hmm. So I do like that. I feel like that really worked. I liked, which is weird because I hate T.J. Miller, but for once I'm like, he fits perfectly. Him as this character, the way it's played, fits perfectly in this film.
His complaints about his neck.
Yes, I did think that was funny. Yeah. So I appreciate you being here for this, for our probably longest review on Glass House Films. No. I've at least enjoyed talking with you about this film. Whether or not you enjoyed the film itself is an entirely different matter.
The film, no, but anytime I get to talk to you, I'm happy.
So, thank you all for watching. If you would like to comment below what you thought of the movie or of the book or of the adaptation, whatever, please comment below. I'd love to talk to you about it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/glassfilmshouse, Twitter @glasshousefilms, and facebook.com/glasshousefilms. Thank you all, and next week I think is A Quiet Place, which I'm very excited for. So, without further ado, bye.